Hi, welcome back to High on Utah. I'm Heather Groom, and we are so happy to have AJ Rounds with us today. So, AJ is one of my dear friends, and he's an amazing entrepreneur. He's got a great life story, and we're actually going to split this into two episodes. So, we're going to talk a little bit about your entrepreneur journey, and then also we're going to talk about something special that I'm going to leave at that for right now. So, with that, welcome.
Thank you. High on
And
Utah.
high on
I'm
Utah.
already high on Utah.
Yes. Oh, I always say I'm actually going to make some like swag. It's going to say life is elevated. So
Come to Utah, get high.
that's
right.
Exactly. Hey, we have a good high altitude here.
There you
So,
go. I love it.
well, introduce yourself to
Thanks,
my
Heather.
audience.
This is so fun to be here, and I appreciate the time. And anytime we can spend together, I mean, as happened before the show, our pre-show banter just kind of got out of control.
Yeah,
so
we kind of already started off
late.
like talking for about 30 to an hour. But anyway, so
here we
yes.
are. So I'm from Utah, Utah born and raised. Grew up in Logan area.
Okay.
And so I'm a Cache Valley kid, we like to call it.
Yes.
And I went to Utah State, did high school up there, went to Utah State, got my undergrad and graduate degree at Utah State. Did some summer sales while I was going to college, which was amazing. And Heather knows this because some of her kids are doing it right
Some of
now.
my kids do summer sales, and
Yeah.
let's say that that wasn't a thing. Kind of like when I was in school.
It
Okay,
was
as much. It was
just
just starting
just
because I
starting.
remember people
Yeah.
were talking about it, and
Yeah.
so we were like, but they were making killer money. They were either doing that or going on those crab fisherman boats and
Up in
doing
Alaska.
stuff up in
That's
Alaska,
right.
like
Yeah.
Deadliest Catch, like they were catching crabs and stuff. And I was like, wait, what?
That's
And they're
right.
making 30 grand in 3 months, but they're like, but it's freezing, and then I was like, no thanks. Okay.
That's awesome.
So, but it also didn't seem real. But so anyway, so you were doing summer
So I
sales.
did summer sales, and I will say that was amazing. That was inspirational, just because, I think everyone should go through something like that
Absolutely.
because it just teaches you the soft skills you need to have to be successful in any career you choose, right?
Yep. And if you don't understand what summer sales are, just for my audience, because some
Oh,
people are
yes.
outside of Utah, let me kind of
Yeah.
explain, because it's a little bit, I feel like,
It's nuanced
focused
here.
more. Yeah, and
Mhm.
most people here in Utah understand it, but a lot of the college kids here, because we do have a lot of, institutes of higher education, they'll go for this summer, and they don't have to be in college. They could also just be kind of, living the dream, right? And
Mhm.
doing what they want.
I think
But
you have to be 18.
you have to be 18.
Yeah.
But they'll go and they'll sell like pest control or like alarm systems, or like I've heard even like window washing. I mean,
Video packages,
yeah,
Comcast,
solar,
whatever.
yeah,
Mhm.
a lot of different things. And so they go and they have to do door to door sales. And because a lot of them have served LDS missions, they're kind of used to, I joke around and say they're used to meeting people at doors, and they're also used to good experiences and rejection. So they're a little bit hardy that way. And a lot of them speak another language too.
That's right.
Because they've
That's right.
served maybe, speaking Spanish or Chinese or whatever.
That's right.
And so summer sales is like an opportunity where my kids, at first, I didn't know how I felt about it because I was like, I don't know. But it's really been good for them because you learn a lot of life lessons. Like
You
I
do.
remember one time one of my kids called me for sitting on a sidewalk, kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, So, there's some real growth in that. So I'm like,
Grit.
I've become a big fan of summer
Yeah.
sales. I always tell when people are like, my kid's wondering what to do, I'm like, put them on summer sales, get them in
Right.
there, because they also make really good money.
That's
Like
right.
if they can learn to talk to people that are,
Mhm.
there's just a lot of really great perks, and they make money. So a lot of kids, they'll work during summer sales, kind of doing one of those sales things. And so if you want to know more on that, just message me. And then after that, they then don't have to work during the
Yeah.
school year
It helps you
because,
focus. Like for the
yeah.
dumb kids like me, I'm like, okay, I can't work really that well during school because I have to focus on school. And so
Exactly.
it really helps those that need to focus.
Yeah, and so you just kind of make money in a short amount of time,
Exactly.
and then you don't have to necessarily work
Yeah.
during the school year. So okay, so you did summer sales.
Summer
What did you
sales.
sell?
I did a company that did some video packages up front, some Christian packages.
Okay.
It's called Living Scriptures, and it's Bible and some other things too. And I did that in Seattle, and I was
Wow.
so frustrated because I did really, really great in that area. It was a really hard area because Seattle, there's a lot of money, but I mean, people are very close, and they do not like
Yes.
people on their doorstep
Well, and
at
it's hard
all.
because they work, and so then it's
That's
also
right.
hard during the day.
That's right. So this was in what year was this? 2000. So I was having an incredible summer, and they told us throughout the entire summer, sell VHS tapes, which is still a
I
thing
love
then,
it.
right?
VH tapes, yes.
Because DVDs weren't going to come out for another probably 2 years. Well, that very next season they came out. So I
Oh.
sold all these VHS packages and I lied to all my customers because I told them it wasn't coming out for a couple of years. Because these are
And you
multi-year
didn't
packages
know
and I didn't know. So
exactly.
that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to switch companies. I'm not going to do that company again. So then I went to pest control, which was so much nicer because
That's what my kids do. My
yeah,
kids both my boys
uh,
and even both my daughter-in-laws, they all have sold. So even my
that's
daughter-in-laws have
so
done door-to-door
cool.
sales like that. And so,
In
yeah.
the Midwest area, probably,
Yeah,
right?
probably Midwest and then Delaware
And then Delaware.
also.
Okay. So I went and did pest control and had some good success doing that in Cincinnati, Ohio, of all places.
Mm.
And what I didn't know is they're like, well, let's just try this office out there with like 12 people and see how they do. Because that wasn't really an area where that was known for a lot of pests. It's kind of north, right? But carpenter ants were our friends that year.
I was
So we
gonna
sold
say
everything on
that's where I
carpenter
was like,
ants.
I'm always like, get stationed in an area that has a lot of bugs, a
Yeah,
lot of
right.
pests, like because of whatever. Then even in a down economy,
Yeah.
people are going to be buying that.
So went through that experience, and then of course I was offered to manage, and then just worked up the chain for about 8 years,
Oh, you did that
doing
for 8 years.
a long
Okay.
time. Went to the corporate side. It was a really good experience. Learned so many great things in that world. Um, but I think the biggest thing is just grit. Because when it's hard, you have to dig deep down and decide, can I do this, or am I going to just let it go and let it beat me? And I was like, no, I'm not going to let this beat me. And part of that came from, which is what you talked about earlier, the LDS mission that I served for.
And one of the things we have to say, because we haven't said
Yes,
it yet.
we need to talk about this.
Okay, maybe I don't even know if I should interrupt this story, but I'm going to interrupt this story for a
Do
minute
it.
and go back a little bit and just explain something really funny. So
Yeah.
AJ and I met probably a few times, like in kind of political world and
Kind
in
of
some other things,
passing.
kind of
Yeah.
passing.
Hmm.
Didn't really remember it, but I'd hear his name occasionally, and I'm like, okay, one of these days I'm going to meet this guy. And anyway, he ended up calling me for about a property, and he's like, "Oh, I'm AJ Rounds," and I was like, I just even heard your name like a few days ago. And we joked around. And then he told me, I don't even know how we got on the topic. We ended up talking for like an hour to 2 hours and we didn't
It
even
was
talk about the
awesome. It
property
was so
almost at
fun.
all. And then we were chatting because we have all the same common friends and everything. He's calling me about this property. And then he's like, oh yeah, and I served an LDS mission in Valencia, Venezuela. And like, if you have to know this, like no one has served there. That's where I had served an LDS mission. I was one of the first ones there, and let's just say there have not been LDS missionaries there
Mm-mm.
for like 20 years,
Long time.
basically.
05, I think, was the
Yeah,
last
and well,
ones.
and there would be like when I was there, it was closed, and so
Hmm.
we all knew each other, and then it reopened, and then it kind of got closed again because they've had a lot of political unrest and a lot of
Yeah.
problems, and we love our Venezuelans, but it was so funny when we were chatting on the phone, and he's like, "Oh, I served in Valencia, Venezuela." I was like, "Okay, now we're like best friends." Because
Mic
if you
drop.
find,
Let's
yeah, like
go.
if
Let's
you
explore
find
this.
somebody that served in Venezuela, you're like instantly bonded with them,
Right.
and then also on top of that, like even in the same area.
The
So
same
anyway,
area.
so going back to the
We
grit,
dodged the
okay.
same
Yeah,
bullets,
we joke around saying
We
dodging
drank the
bullets.
same Malta that no one can stand
Yes.
except us in
I never did like that
Venezuela.
actually. Frescolita I did like
Frescolita,
eventually.
there we go.
But definitely it was just like this bonding experience. So
Yeah.
anyway, then I was like, AJ, like by the end of the phone call, I was like, even if you don't buy this property, like we're gonna be besties
We're gonna hang
anyway.
out
So
forever.
we're gonna stay in touch.
That's right.
So, but you learned a lot because what people don't realize, and for people that have not ever been LDS, a mission is it's really hard. I
It
mean, it is
is.
hard, and you're in a
Rejection
different
every
country.
day.
You're learning. People think you're dumb because you don't
Mhm.
speak the language very well, so they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, does this person talk?" Or and so they,
And what
it's
you think you
hard.
learn in high school is not the
And then
same
your high
Spanish
school
they
Spanish
speak.
is not
Right.
the same, and so
Right.
so anyway, it's an interesting experience, and you're learning to deal with a lot of different people, but you're also seeing like the best of humanity. You're
That's
learning
right.
how to try to help people through hard times, and so
Yeah.
it's a very interesting, great experience. And
Yeah.
so anyway, so we had that in common, but he served
And we're
in
bonded forever because of
yes,
that,
because of that, exactly.
So, and one of the things that, the mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints teaches you is that you can dig down and find that grit. Even when people are treating you horrible and it's a really terrible day and it's 99 degrees and it's, 100%
99 degrees,
humidity.
like 105, but yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
105, 99 at night, and you're just sweating to death. People are actually good innately.
I agree
And
with that.
and you find that you can give of yourself, and when you're doing that, it makes all of life and mankind, humankind better,
Yeah, because
really.
even if they're not, and kind of going back to that, like even if people were not LDS, what people don't realize is that you would just make really amazing friends that
That's
were of
right.
all different religions. And I remember, like, I don't know why I just thought this, but it came back in my head. But I had, like, there was a woman there. We didn't have a washer, by the way. Our washer was right here, and we were like hand washing
That stone
everything. And we
tablet
had
by
this
the
like
sink.
stone, literally. I mean, most people
Yeah.
would not believe the stuff I've been through. Like, we were just talking before we
Right.
started and I never had hot water except for 3 weeks, like, because sometimes we didn't even have running water to shower.
Yeah.
We'd bathe with, like, bucket
The
baths, you
shower
know?
bucket. Yep.
Yeah, a shower bucket, and, if we were really getting deluxe, we would heat hot water on the stove
Yeah,
and dump
right.
it into the bucket so it would be mildly warm.
That's right.
So we
That's
had,
right.
like, I mean, yes, thank you very much. I've been through some yeah, that was a time, right?
So,
And
yeah, so
but anyway, but it was just wild,
so
but
we learned
it's
grit in
you learn
Venezuela.
grit and you learn but I was starting to say this woman that we met, she was not even of that religion and she just knew that we were out and about and she was like she owned a little laundry place and she was like
Mhm.
you can bring all your stuff here and do your laundry for free and we were like crying we're like that's the nicest thing anyone's ever done for us, you
Yeah,
know, and
right.
so just people are good.
They are good.
People are good in
They're
the
good.
world.
And I think when you take that servitude type attitude to all the elements of your life later on, it really serves you well because you become a servant of the people in whatever industry you're in, and that just changes the whole dynamic. So you're not just out to make a buck from them, right?
Exactly.
So anyway, had that experience, did the summer sales thing. An interesting story. I remember the day exactly. I had one child and another little one on the way. And my wife's name is Emily.
And you were doing summer sales when you had kids
Yeah.
then. So, okay.
Well, I was doing summer sales during school and then grad school, and then did a lot of student government stuff, and then we got married, and then did it corporate on the corporate side for a while.
Wow. Yeah.
I was the corporate trainer and the corporate
Wow.
recruiter for the entire company. And so, as a trainer, I was out on the doors once with one of the teams, and we were expecting our second. And I was in California, Bakersfield, or something. And I remember this moment because it changed my life. Emily called, and she was having a really hard day 'cause she was about 7 or 8 months pregnant, and she had fallen. Nothing serious, but she had fallen, and I wasn't there.
Mm.
And she was realizing I was never there. I traveled Monday through Saturday every single week because I was around the entire nation. And at that moment, she said, "We've got to make a decision here. It's either you or it's the company. But, or it's, excuse me, either me or the company. But you got to choose between one
Like it
of
was
us."
like it's
Yeah,
funny because I
it was
talk
the
to a lot
moment.
of people and there is a moment. And I
There is a
once had a
moment.
moment like that too when Brent was traveling a lot and we had young
It was
kids.
too much.
It was just one day it was like, okay, we got
Yeah.
to do something different.
And the money was wonderful and, all the wonderful accolades and things. But in that moment, I said, okay, obviously I'm going to choose you, hun. So I literally called my boss on my way to the airport and says, I'm done. That's it. Got on the plane and never went back.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was a moment when I realized, okay, I I'm gonna make the right decision for me personally and for my family from here on out because I hadn't done that before because the money was just so great. But I decided, okay, this is the moment when now I'm gonna do the things the right way, and I want to make sure that I'm doing from my core, and it's fits with my personal brand. So
I love that.
so that was the moment. Then I said, okay, I have no plan. I don't know where I'm going. I had a hot stint in infomercials, and that was fun. And then
You were in infomercials?
I
I did not
was.
know this.
Little
Okay.
Giant Ladder, we built
Oh,
a
yeah.
infomercial
Okay.
campaign that took Halloween to the next level. It was so cool. So that was fun to be
So
part of
funny.
that. And then we went to I went to Shelf Reliance and helped them rebrand to Thrive. They're one of the
Yeah.
largest food storage companies in the world right now, and they just sold, so that's kind of exciting for them. And then I had the best learning experience of my entire life. We went down to Vegas, packed up our bags, and started a LED lighting franchise down in Las Vegas, Nevada. Didn't know a soul, which was Problem number one, didn't know the distribution model. Problem number two, and it was LED lighting. LED lighting in 2010-ish.
Yeah, so like outdoor,
Yeah,
right?
for the
LED.
casinos. And I thought, oh, City of
Oh.
Light, that makes sense. Let's
Mm.
retrofit all the casinos.
Oh, because you were doing commercial then.
Commercial.
Not like
Not
jellyfish, like not
residential.
like the
Mm-mm.
okay,
No, this is
residential.
2010, and LED lighting had just come out. It was like AI is right now. It was the
Okay.
biggest thing.
Yes.
So we thought, okay, let's jump on this bandwagon. Let's go to Las Vegas and let's retrofit all the casinos because it's the City of Light. They have a lot of lighting needs, right? What I didn't understand is that when you go to Las Vegas, you have to be on the in crowd.
Oh, for sure.
It is a small business
Yes.
community.
Oh, absolutely.
And so the fact that we were selling to casinos, because we had some orders coming in, we did a lot of demos. All of a sudden, the electrical warehouses got word that we were in town. And so they went to casinos and bypassed and said, how come you're buying from them when you could buy from us for cheaper and more products? And instantly, that week, all of our sales dried up and we never got another sale. So I
Oof.
did not understand.
That's when you do with, and again, okay, this is an entrepreneur lesson, right?
Right.
Market testing ahead of
That's
time
right.
and market viability.
That's
But
right. And know your
yes.
distribution
And know your
model.
distribution model.
Because that was,
Yeah.
we were completely off on that. So we sold at cost, went to St. George for a hot minute. I was the marketing director at Dixie State University, which it was back then. It's changed several times since, but that's what it was. Had a great experience, realized that I am not good with managing. So at Dixie State University, loved the position, but I spent about 60% of my time managing politics and 40% of my time doing my job.
Yes.
And I could not do that anymore. So I did not last very long. So about 2 years later, we moved back up to Utah County and I joined a small startup called Lone Tree. And we were doing corporate housing for the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
Did that for about 6 years. We took it from, 4 years. We took it from 2 employees.
Was it corporate housing in like North Dakota?
Yeah, North Dakota, Texas, Louisiana.
I always have to do a shout out to all my
Nevada.
family in South Dakota.
There
But
you
we're
go.
much better in South
Shout out
Dakota
to the
than North
family.
Dakota. But anyway.
Why not? My not.
That's
my
right.
favorite thing, right? So anyway, so I did that for 4 years. We grew that small company from about 2 million in revenue to about 30 million, and then had a brief exit. And that's when I met with my co-founders at Rev Road, and we started Rev Road.
I love it. And
Yeah.
what's funny is we've crossed paths
Yeah.
on the Rev Road journey. I was actually at like the main big grand opening when they moved from like this little small building
a little
to like
teeny
a
office in
little
Mapleton.
bigger.
Yeah, to Provo and the rig, and Heather was there. It
Yeah, I was
awesome.
there. So I know we chatted there and then it was just funny, but we didn't
right.
really remember. But so tell me a little bit more because I love that. And I joke around a lot of times and say I feel like people have like an entrepreneurial like it's either in your DNA. It's kind of like I'm convinced there's some DNA like marker, you
Yeah.
know, to be an entrepreneur because I remember even as a little girl, like I was in sales. Like I remember just like I did a paper route. We did
Yeah.
like Penny Saver, if you even know
Oh,
what that
very
even
good.
is. That
Yes.
was like an Arizona thing, but like
Yeah.
we like would put these little Penny Saver routes. And I was like, I was like 8 years old. My siblings did it, my parents, and for a little extra money, and we would like deliver these papers every week, which then led to like a paper route. So then I did a paper route.
Yeah.
Wasn't as diligent always on like my dad also kind of helped me out a little bit there. So I have to be
Thank
clear
goodness
on
for
that.
dads,
But I was
right?
good at collecting the money. I would go and dress up and be like, would knock on the door and be like, hi. And they would give me tips a lot of times,
That's
you know,
awesome.
and I would just be really nice, but I would collect the money. And it's just funny when I look back at that, you know, and
That's
so,
fun.
but then I later got into like magazine sales in junior high.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
remember because we didn't have my parents had started a business. And so they didn't have any money really much, you know, extra. And I wanted a stereo that had like a record player and a double cassette thing, you know, player, and then
that's
like
awesome.
2 big
Like a
speakers.
boombox kind of
Yeah,
thing?
but it was bigger than that. It was an actual like
Yes.
stereo system.
Let's go.
And I remember I was like 12 and they were like, whoever sells the most magazines can earn this stereo system. And I was like, I am going to go. And so I like made this little marketing plan. I was like
Mhm.
12 years old. And I remember I was like, I'm going to go to the medical tower and go to all the doctor's offices
Cool.
because they all have to get magazine subscriptions. So I like started on the top floor and I went around and just like wrote up all of their renewals,
Smart.
for all their
Yes.
magazines. And so I did all of that. And I didn't even like bother a lot of my neighbors because I was like, I'm hitting these doctors because I know that they like, I was in my brain like, okay, who needs magazine subscriptions? So again, know your market stuff, right?
That's right.
And so then I remember we did that. And I was in like fifth period with Mr. Roberts. I still even remember where I was. And I didn't know if I had won or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, okay, we're going to announce the magazine sales, thing. And they announced my name, Heather Hawkins won. And I remember
Yes.
I like was like crying. I run to the office. Anyway, I was like so excited. So anyway, I had that stereo actually for like a long time.
Wow,
But I
that's
think
cool.
again, it's like
That's
that
cool.
entrepreneur, right? And some people it's maybe not their thing, but I think actually a lot of people, even if you don't think it's in your DNA,
Mm-hmm.
it can be. Um, I think it's just also finding out what you get excited about,
That's right.
you know?
I think I think there are hunters and there are gatherers, right? And to be an entrepreneur, I think you have to be a hunter. You have to like to go out and hunt and figure this out and be in for the kill. And, just you have to solve all the problems along the way. So you have to be a problem solver and someone who just likes adventure and the unknown. Because if you like the dot to dot to dot, then it's probably entrepreneurship would be very hard for you as a person,
Yes.
right? But if you like the unknown and kind of building that game plan as you go, entrepreneurship is the way for you.
And I agree. And it's funny you say that, the hunter and gatherer. I always say you're either like the builders or the managers,
There you
right?
go. Yeah.
And kind of like
Mhm.
creators and, kind of a visionary creator or the management
Right.
side. And both are great. But even in the management space, even if you think, hey, this right now, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, well, I'm not sure I ever want to start a business, then you know what? Team up with people that
That's right.
are.
That's right.
And there's still ways to be an entrepreneur even if you have a different skill set. Because even
100%.
Brent's skill set, I think that's why we're so happily married, is that we've learned that we're like, what you do, I can't do. Like Brent knows all my passwords. I do not know any, right? And so
I love
like this
that.
is just one little piece of
Let's get
that.
those recorded
But
somewhere in case something
yes,
happens
exactly.
again.
So I'm just like, Brent, we joke around. This sounds so terrible, but I'm like, Brent, like like if we ever move to something that needs like a fingerprint or something for like a password, I was like, I'm just gonna be like, if you die, I'm cutting off your finger because I will not
Put
know
it on
how to
ice.
access anything of mine because Brent is like, he's like, it's just really easy. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But that's not my skill set. But
That's
but
great.
again, partner with people, if not
Right.
because there still is a place for
Well,
entrepreneurism.
and I completely agree. For every Steve Jobs, there's a Wozniak, right? And
Absolutely.
for, Bill Gates, there's Paul Allen, right? I mean, you always have to you need the visionary and then you need the executor. And that's the best kind of team to have. And the biggest companies have shown that that's the formula for success. So I love that. I think there is a place for
Yeah.
everyone in entrepreneurship, but know your skill set and know what you're good at naturally, and gravitate towards that. I mean, there's a lot of philosophies out there that says, build upon, make your weaknesses your strengths. And to an extent, I think that's good advice. But I think take your strengths and make them even
I
stronger.
agree.
You
I
know?
love that. I totally agree because I think so often we're kind of trying to improve ourselves in these weak areas.
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
honestly tell you one of the things I have an assistant named Madeline. I've actually interviewed her on my podcast. She puts up a lot with a lot with me.
Great.
Love her.
Someone's got to be a
You
guinea
know,
pig, right?
exactly. But I mean, and that's the thing is that, I think you've got to know your skill set. And honestly, computers
Mhm.
are just, it's not my skill set. She and Brent
Sure.
talk about my passwords. But then
That's
they just
awesome.
notify me,
That's awesome.
But again, I've learned what things I need to be focused on.
Yeah.
And when I'm focused on the right things and my right skill set, like if
Mhm.
I'm living, it's kind of that 80-20 model a lot of
Mhm.
times, like what's that strong 20%? And I remember reading a book that was called I think it's called The Great Leap. Did you ever read that? It's like the little fishbowl. There's like a fishbowl on the front
Oh,
cover.
I have not read that
It's
one.
just a really simple read, and I remember I read it like 15 years ago, and it made a real impact on my
Hmm.
life
The
because
Great Leap.
it talked about staying in your zone of genius,
Hmm.
and that you can stay in your zone of greatness or good, and that's fine, and you'll do well and you'll do fine. But if you're not tapped into your zone of genius, which really is like kind of this top 10% of what you actually do,
Mhm.
and maybe 20%, but if you're tapped into your zone of genius, that's when you become unstoppable
Mm.
because those are your skill sets. And then find people around you that maybe you're not as good, with some of those other things. And like I joke around and say when I'm hiring, I make a Heather not to do list. And I look at the skill set needed for all the things that I should not be doing,
That's
because if I had
smart.
my passwords, I would wreck it anyway, because I literally have locked myself out of programs because I'm like, I think I know this password, and then I guess 5 times and then I'm locked out. So I find people that have different skill sets,
That's right.
you know?
And that's okay. And I think that takes a level of humility as an entrepreneur to say, listen, I am not good at these 5 or 10 things, so I'm going to hire out for those.
Absolutely.
And then they stay in their zone of genius. I love that verbiage because that's where they're going to make the most money and the biggest impact anyway. So keep them there, right?
Right.
I get so frustrated. At RevRoad, we've got 85 plus portfolio companies, and a lot of the founders will work on the ticky tacky stuff, like making sure their lease is dialed in for their office or making sure the printer is functioning that day. I'm like, no, do not do
Exactly.
those things. You are losing money by working on those things. Hire those things out and focus on what you do best.
I always say one of the things I've been really more pensive about as an entrepreneur in the last probably 2 years is I have to ask myself, what is my hourly rate?
Mhm.
And because as an entrepreneur, you start out with scrappy business mode
Mhm.
and you are everything, whether you like it or not. It's like you are the one that's doing the printer. You're the one that you're having to set up your Google phone number, whatever it is, because you don't have necessarily you don't have the
The team.
funds,
Yeah.
and the team to do it. But then what becomes really hard is when you start scaling, you've got to figure out what are the things I need to get off my plate.
That's right.
And so what I started doing is making a list when I hire of things Heather hates to do. And the things Heather hates to do, which really, as we've talked and we've mentioned this about tech, right?
Wait,
So that
passwords?
was
Something
like,
about passwords?
yes,
I
we're
remember
talking
that.
passwords, right? But we're even just talking tech in general. It's like, I know that is not my strength, and nor do I ever want it to be. And one of the years that my business actually went down slightly was the year that I generaled my own house. And I've done a lot in construction. But what I also learned is when I generaled my own house, I became so consumed with that because I kind of throw myself in and then do it to like
100%.
100%,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But what I noticed is I actually would have been better off with hiring out more of the tasks or having a, general supervisor even, because even though I love doing it and I don't totally regret it, it cost me a lot of time and I could have been building my business in a different way. So it became kind of a distraction. And
Yeah.
I feel like you've got to be careful as an entrepreneur with those distractions. And just like you're saying, like, you've got to kind of know your price per hour a little bit and get off doing certain things. Because my
Yeah.
biggest problem is if you are an entrepreneur out there, you own a business, and you always say this will just take me a few minutes.
Mhm.
Anytime I say that to myself, if I say I might as well do this because it'll just take me a few minutes. First of all, we always know that takes what? 2 to 3 times longer than
Exactly.
anticipated,
Mhm.
And I ask, so now I start asking myself, is this something someone else can do? And is it something they can even do better and faster than I can do?
That's right. Well, and I couldn't agree more, Heather. I think there's an element of focus there that has to be there, right? I just came back from a summit with our side hustle property management company called Key Renter on my hat here, and I've looked at some of the franchisees across the country. There's 70 of us, and the ones that have spent, I mean, they have made the property management business their focus. They're doing millions in revenue versus the
Absolutely.
ones that are not. They're just kind of just doing, growing maybe at a 5% clip each year or something, So focus is so critical, and people are rewarded for
They say
focus.
with the phrase, there's riches in the niches.
That's right. That's
And
right.
you've got to know your niche. And a lot of times even I have to start asking myself questions of, is this my focus?
That's
Is
right.
this something I should be doing? Or is this something someone else should be doing? And
That's
when you
right.
get too spread thin, you can't do anything great.
That's right.
You can only do things well enough to get the ball rolling and keep it rolling.
That's right.
But, and again, it's a constant struggle, I think, for entrepreneurs. Like I have to
Right.
reevaluate almost every week.
Well,
Like,
we're squirrel people. Squirrel.
Yeah.
So we have to focus
Hey, we're going to
on
say visionary, okay?
That's
Not squirrel. Yeah.
visionary. Exact there you go, I like that better. So we are so easily distracted by the shiny new object in the corner, and so we just have to not do that, right? We have to say, "Okay, I'm gonna focus on this and make and be disciplined and say
Yes.
this is the focus that I'm gonna keep for now, for at least a time frame, or hit a certain goal or whatever." You're so good at this, at setting goals and achieving them.
Yeah, but maybe I'm good at that, but I get distracted, and I like that you're saying this
You have
because
to just stay focused, and I am a
yes.
people pleaser myself, and a lot of us are, right?
Well, and you come up with business ideas. Like, how
That's right.
often do you come up? Like, Brenda actually put a little moratorium on my business ideas right now.
No
He like
more.
looked at me the other day and he said, "Heather, I love all your ideas. It's what I love about you." He's like, "But let's not take on any more."
That's right.
Because I'm like, "Hey, guess what would be? I have this great idea." As soon as I say it's a great
Yes.
idea, he's like, like almost convulsing. He's like,
Yeah.
"Okay, wait, stop with the great ideas
PTSD
of
sets
this."
in, he's
Yeah,
like,
because
"No,
he's
what?"
like, "Okay, wait. We already have a lot going on,
Right. Well, and a lot of us are people pleasers, and we're good with people, which is great. You gotta have those founders. You either have the tech founder or you have the kind of the soft skills people founder, right? But for us people pleaser or people, I want to say people focused folks, they're really focused on the customer and the end user. We have to learn how to say no, which is so hard because
So hard for me. That's one of my hardest things.
it's me too, because when people want me to, be at certain events or help in certain ways or mentor this person, I just want to be helpful and say, yes,
Yes.
I want to do that. But you have to learn how to say no to the things that are not going to keep your focus on the most important thing.
One of the things that's helped me lately is that because as a people pleaser, like I think the word no is like so it's
We have
so
a negative
hard for us. We
connotation with
do.
it.
And
Yeah.
what I've had to say is sometimes not yet
Yeah.
because for me that seems softer. So sometimes I'll be like maybe not yet on this.
Yeah.
And instead of like a hard no or I'll say am I the right person for this
That's
or
right.
is there someone else again that could be a better fit?
That's right.
Because even with my time, it's hard,
That's right.
and so it gets difficult.
And I've had to do the same thing. I say, okay, I don't like to say no either. So I say, well, not this quarter because I'm heads
Exactly.
down
That's what I mean.
fundraising.
Right.
I am just focused right now and I can't do other things, but maybe next quarter, let's see how things go. And
And
people are
they're
fine with
great.
that.
They
They don't
are.
care. They're like, okay, we got you. That makes sense. Thanks for your time. I'll reach out to you again. And that's
Exactly.
perfectly fine.
Yep, and sometimes you just need to reanalyze.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about Rev Road is just amazing. I've been a huge fan for
Thank
a
you,
long
Heather.
time,
Appreciate that.
and also tell us a little bit about the different companies that you're involved with because you mentioned Key Renter,
Yeah.
and I know you have different franchises. You've got kind of a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Does your wife also tell you, "Hey, stop with the
Oh
great
my
ideas"?
gosh. She's like, well, and my wife, bless her heart, she comes from a home where her father got the first job out of college, did that for 45 years,
Wow.
retired,
So
and that was their life,
yeah.
And so this whole entrepreneurship thing is very hard for her. But I grew up with it. My dad was ADHD and he, tragically he passed away about 16 years ago. He was killed in a hit and run accident, but
And that's another story for another day
it's
because
another
I'm
story.
so sorry about that.
Oh, we appreciate that. But what we learned after he passed away is there were things we knew about from his business ventures and things we did not. So it took us about 8 years to figure out probate because there were so many pots
It's
around, It was
Yeah, that
wild.
episode, we're doing an episode, by the way,
Yeah.
on that later, but we're gonna talk about what to do
Getting
with
things
your
in
real estate
order.
and getting
That's
because people
right.
always think they have things in order, and
And they
lately
don't.
I've been doing a lot of real estate. I've been doing divorces and probate
It's a
lately.
mess. It
And
is
let
so
me
hard.
tell you, there
Yeah.
a lot of my political background skills and things and LDS missionary days and
Yeah.
all that skill set has really come into play, right, between divorce and probate.
That's
But
right.
let me tell you, we're doing a probate episode later. But
Let's do it.
anyway.
Okay. Anyway, so I grew up with this, and this was always the mantra and the MO is go out and just, build businesses and meet people and all these things. So I'm used to that. So I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And I knew this early on, and I told Emily when we were getting married, this is what you're in for. So just so you know. And she was, bless her heart, she's been great with it and very supportive all along the way. I couldn't do it without her. So I'm really, really grateful for her. Um, the way we got together for Rev Road, so it's myself and 5 other co-founders, Darren Hill, who many people know, he was the CEO for many, many years and one of the main instigators in bringing all of us together. And there was Jason and Amy Caldwell, they're a couple and they're down in Texas now, and then Bruce Hassler, our CTO, and then Bart Scala, he was our CFO from Colorado. So 3 of us were kind of here and 3 of us were away. Anyway, so we got together and said, "Hey, we feel like venture capital is broken. There's so many businesses being built here, but so many of them are failing." And that wasn't just a Utah phenomenon, that was nationwide. 90% is the stat of failure
I
for
mean,
small
that's what
businesses.
I've done some research into that as well, and
It's
it's
crazy.
it's really startling. But it's because they don't, again, they don't know how to scale. They don't have that. There's kind
Exactly.
of this middle area, and
Exactly.
they can do something for so long when they're like keeping it like in startup mode. But then
Right.
when you have to go to the next level,
Right.
that's when the failure a lot of times happens.
You're exactly right. And we realized that we're like, the venture capitalists, they bring in these entrepreneurs and, they do the whole pitch thing like Shark Tank and they go through the presentation and everything. And then they just write a check. And then they're like, good
And they're like, "Good
luck.
luck, peace
Go,
out."
go,
Yep.
go bring us a return. And the founders are like, oh, what do we do with this money? How do we even spend it wisely? Right. So there was this huge gap of knowledge that wasn't happening. So RevRoad decided to flip that model on its head and say, let's help these founders with knowledge and expertise first and then we'll write them a check second. And so it completely changed the order of operations.
It was like a
And
mentorship program up front,
that's right.
and that's why I was such a big fan
That's right.
years ago when I ran into Rev Road because I was like, this is what really should be
It's the
happening
missing
first. And
piece.
you also know if you're going to give them money, also too,
Exactly.
because you're like, you start learning, is this a really a great business model?
That's
Is
right.
this sustainable? Is there growth? And a lot of times you have to tweak the
That's right.
direction a little bit. And so, it was
Or tell them to
interesting.
stop and pivot entirely, right? Because
Exactly.
that happens too.
Right.
And there's these great founders and they have so much potential. But if they just have someone to lean on that has done it before, they're so much more likely to be successful.
Absolutely.
And like you said, with our investors, we said, hey, this will mitigate your risk as well because we're actually just funding the companies that are probably more likely to succeed than not. So we have had some failures. 14 of those companies have not made it to date, but that's like a 67% success rate, which is way, way better than a 90% failure rate, right?
Exactly.
So we feel like we're making a really big difference and it's kind of exciting what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we got together for the last 8 years. We've been building this company, Rev Road. The name comes from it's one of my favorite claims to fame is I finally like after pages and pages and pages of names and looking at URLs, we finally came up with what are we doing here? Well, we're helping companies get down the road to revenue. I'm like, oh, that's it, Rev Road, and luckily it was available. So we built this company, hired a team. At its peak, we had about 65 different full-time folks on staff with marketing and sales and dev and finance and capital raising.
Hmm.
And we're cranking away, and now we've entered a new chapter where we're maturing out our portfolio, which is what venture capitalists do a lot. And they decide, okay, we're not taking on any more new investments. We're going to maximize and harvest the ones we have in our portfolio, which is where RevRoad's at now. So we're really excited for what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's
Different turn of events. And
that's
and that's the
right.
thing. You have to be, I think the other thing is you've got to be nimble,
That's right. That's
even
right.
as you grow. I think what ends up happening is, even with bigger companies is that when they can't be nimble, that's when they start to fail.
That's right. And we would show our portfolio companies all along the way, just that principle. Be nimble, be flexible, turn if it's not working,
Pivot where
pivot
needed.
where you need to. This is kind of a random story, but it kind of illustrates this whole pivot motion, right? Or notion. We were doing a parade once for Utah Valley. It's the Freedom Parade, I believe is what it's called. And I had one of my side businesses that I've had for 14 years is a limo company because I just love helping people out with just making their days that much more magical. So it's
I
a whole
love
other
that.
whole other story in itself, and we may get to that in a second. But there we are. There's thousands of people on the sides of the road. We've got the limo, that's going through the parade, and then Rev Road has what we call a rat. It's called the Rev Rod, but it's a rat rod for promotional purposes. It's lettered with Rev Road, and it's this 1920s. Uh, uh, I don't even know how to describe it. It's one of those vehicles that's kind of like a rat rod with the big engine up front that's uncovered and it's low to the ground and it's short and squatty. And anyway, it's old. And so we're halfway through the parade. The rev rod is following the limo and it dies in the middle of the parade. And we're like, What are we
I've done
gonna
a lot of parades and because of
what are
politics,
we
so
gonna
that's
do?
like horrific.
So it's like
Yeah.
the
You're
worst
like, what do
thing
you
ever.
do?
So we're like, okay, here we are. So I'm like, okay, you guys, I think I have a tow rope in the back of the limo, and we didn't. So I'm like, tie some of your t-shirts together, and we will tow the rat rod the
No,
rest of the way to the parade, and we did. And so
that's
that's how
amazing.
we figured this thing out. And it was so funny because people were like, wait a second, there's a limo pulling this car
With
through this with
t-shirts, with
t-shirts, and
tied-in
like,
t-shirts.
what
I
is
love it.
happening? Anyway, so we told our founders, I'm like, listen, sometimes you just have to make it work in the moment. You don't know how you're gonna solve the problem, but just solve the problem and move on to the next thing. So
I love
that
that.
was one of our examples of doing that.
That's so great. So you've got Rev Road,
Mhm.
Key Renter,
Yeah.
Limo Company,
Limo
and
ride with the Y.
okay.
And then we've done a few other things too that I've kind of my wife did put her foot down about 2 years ago and says we have got to divest of some of our things because you are way too scattered. You've had that
Our
same
well, that's why I'm laughing
conversation.
because yes,
Yes.
I mean our spouses actually are a lot alike.
Yes. So we sold a couple things, but that's really what I'm focused on now is Rev Road to a very small extent, and then Limo Ride, and then we're going Key Renter, our property management franchise. We're based here in Utah Valley. We do really cool things digitally. We make sure that the reason I got into the property management business, this was about 7 years ago, is because I had my own properties and could not find a good property
I
manager.
couldn't
I could
either.
not.
Trust
They
me,
don't even
that's a
answer the
thing.
phone.
It's a thing.
It's a thing, and it gives everyone else a bad name. I'm like, I can do this better. I really can. So we bought a franchise, and we've been building it ever since. It's been slower growth. Um, in 8 years now almost, we've only had 3 evictions because we're very careful on getting the right tenants in because
That's
it's such
amazing.
an expense for owners and for us if you don't get good tenants in up front. And I know everyone says this, but we truly believe that we manage properties the way that we would if we own them
Yeah,
ourselves. We just want to make sure that that's our investor's biggest investment. Let's make sure we take care of it in that way. So we have
love it.
very, very little churn, and we take care of our owners, our landlords, and our tenants as best we can. We're not perfect, but as best we can. We've sponsored the Jimmy Rex podcast for years, and we're his property management company of choice, and we've worked with other realtors too, and we just love that real estate
Yes,
space.
you know a few right
Yeah,
here.
we
Yes.
we love it. Yeah. So
That's
that's
great.
it. And then what I'm now focused on is because I love real estate and I need to diversify my portfolio,
Yeah.
and I see amazing people like Heather doing cool things in real estate. We're actually raising a real estate fund called Arlen Capital.
And we're gonna cut over to that in just a few
So that's
minutes
all you
after
get for
we wrap
now.
up.
That's
After
it.
this is the
Yes.
teaser
That's
right
the
here,
teaser.
but just know we're gonna
We're
talk a little bit more in depth on that
we're
on this
solving a
next
big problem with
episode.
affordable housing.
But yeah, so I mainly on this episode, I kind of wanted to touch on also what are some of the kind of what tips would you give like someone that's just starting out.
Mhm.
What are some tips you would give to some entrepreneurs right now?
Great
We've touched
question.
on a lot of them right now, even in this episode,
Yeah.
like staying focused and things like that. And what else have
Yeah.
you learned?
Great question, Heather. I think the biggest thing I tell people, and I do, classes at BYU and UVU and everything, but what I tell anyone, entrepreneurs, students, whatever, I say, build your network. Build your network. Go out and get to know people and make a difference in their life, and really don't just like say hi. Get to know them. What do they care about? What
Hmm.
are their goals? What are their aspirations? Because your network will make you or break you so many times over, no matter the industry you're
We
in.
say your network is your net worth.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and it sounds so cliche, but it really is true. Because if you have a network, you can do anything.
And I love that because I've also really tried to focus on in my real estate business. It's not about the transaction.
Right.
And one of the big pivotal moments for me was when I realized I don't own a real estate business. I own a problem solving business.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And I help people solve problems, whether it's growing wealth, whether it's inherited properties, whatever it is. And then I realized, and the vehicle is real estate. And if you start any company and you find a problem that you've had, just like you mentioned with your key renter, right?
Mhm,
It's like
mhm.
you've had problems with property management companies. You find a problem, you find a niche, and again, a little market testing, but then kind of moving that forward and also giving a high level of service. I believe
Right.
that's the future. A lot of times it's that connection,
That's right.
being able to pick up the phone. Like it's interesting to me that a lot of even real estate, realtors and people I meet with, they're like always talking about, oh, wait, we have this automation, we have that automation. And I'm like, you know what? the bottom
Who
line
cares?
comes down to
Yeah. How does
exactly
it benefit me? And so
what
you
I
gotta
do
focus on
is
the
I
benefits.
say, one of the things I ask my clients right off is I say, how can I communicate with you best?
Right.
What is your best method of communication? Is it texting? Is it a phone call? I have clients that some of them never want to hear from me on the phone. I have some of them that always want to hear from me on the
That's
phone.
right.
Some that are texting, some are email. I have some that also they travel out and they're like, if it's in my email, I will see it. If not, so there are different modes. And some people love apps and automation. Some people are like that's the last thing they want to do.
That's
So
right.
it's really finding out how people want to be connected with you.
That's right. And I think along with that, Heather, my second point that I would give to the audience is know your customer, right? Really know them inside and out, because then you'll know how they want to
Absolutely.
communicate, or you'll know how they want to hear from you, or you'll know what benefits they want to see and what ones they just don't care about. I can't tell you how many founders I've sat through, and I've sat through probably 2 or 2,100 pitches in my career, like
Wow.
so many. And many of these founders, they just start diving into the weeds. Like, this is how this technology works, and this is how it functions, and this is what you got to be careful of. I'm like, so how does it benefit me? What does it do for me as the customer? And oftentimes they can't answer that well. So know your customer and know how you are going to help them. And if you can do that, great, you're golden.
I love that. Any other tips?
I mean, those two are big ones. I think the other thing, the third thing is just keep going. It's going to be hard. I love the statement that says choose your hard, right? Being overweight is hard. Working out a lot is hard. Being married is hard. Not being married is hard. Having a business is hard, but being an employee is hard. So just choose your hard and just go for it. Again, you got to just
Yeah,
be gritty and just
absolutely.
this life is not meant to be easy, so whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna have hard days, and let's just go. Let's make it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. And I kind of also say you've got to have fun along the way too.
Right.
Because if you can't schedule in at least a little
That's
fun,
right.
then what are you doing?
Love it.
And, I've had a year a few years ago where, I mean, it was when the real estate market was booming during COVID. I think that was what, 21? And I mean, it was insane. I had a
You
really
couldn't
hard
keep up,
time,
right?
yeah, keeping up and just having fun. But what saved me is sometimes I would have to just block a few hours
Yeah.
of just like, this is time I'm putting down my phone and I'm just enjoying things, and I'm going to be present,
Give yourself permission to
and give
do it.
yourself
I
permission,
love that.
and
Yep.
it does revitalize you as well.
Love it.
But I love your entrepreneur journey. I think that a lot of people, and myself included, I think one of the things that was really hard for me was even giving myself permission to do it
Mm.
in the first place. Like, I think some people, it was like, some of them it comes naturally, but I think sometimes it's easier to put your idea as a back thought
Mhm.
and just say, maybe I'll get to that someday.
That's
And
right.
I think of some of the businesses I actually wanted to start earlier in life that I could have and I didn't. And and I regret that because I think, maybe I could have done that. Like, and to your point, before that we started this episode, we were talking about when you're young and you've got a lot, and even when you're older. I mean, really, you can be an entrepreneur at all age. It's just kind of
Anytime.
figuring out what you can prioritize. But, like I've got a son who's starting his own pest control business right now. He's got a computer science degree. And as a mom, I'm kind of like, okay, wait, you're giving up your computer science job and you're going to go do pest control. And, but I'm also really proud of him because he's
Cool.
taking a risk. He knows how to work hard. If you don't know
Mhm.
how to work hard, then don't start a business. That's my other piece of advice.
Yeah, right.
If you don't
Right.
like to
Oh
all
my
in,
goodness.
then don't do it.
For sure.
But I'm also excited for him. And he's at a phase of life where I think it's really great to do that.
Yeah.
But I want to encourage even some of the seniors that, are watching, it's never really too late.
Mm-mm.
Or,
Mm-mm.
it's I run into people that have started businesses at all different ages, different times. And a lot of times you just need to also have that right mentor, maybe a right partner, things like that as well. So I love having you on today and kind of talking about your entrepreneur journey. And we're going to go deeper on this next little part, but about what he's up to now. And so we're going to say thank you for now.
Thanks,
And then
Heather.
we're going to
So
tune in
fun.
to this next episode. So thanks again for watching today.